This is a story about how a little boy learned to read all at once on one day when he was 3 years old. And it's also a story about thinking back and reading a different time and realizing that something fundamental had changed in the interim. It was over 60 years ago when I woke up in my little house in Yucaipa, California, and I realized I was all alone. I was an only child, my brother and sister hadn't been born yet, and my parents weren't in the house. I looked around, beginning to panic, and then I saw a book on the table. It wasn't really a book. It would be the first book I read. It was really just a single piece of paper on which there were three pieces of information, three frames in a kind of cartoon story. In the first frame was a little boy sitting on his bed, just like I was a little boy sitting on his bed. And there was the piece of paper on the table, and that little boy was engaged in getting dressed. And then in the second frame, that same little boy was hightailing it down the road. I could see his feet flying. You could see the bottoms of his soles. You knew how fast he was going. There may have been little puffs of dust. And there in the beyond was Grandma's house. It was only a block away. We basically lived in one big empty field, Grandma's house and our house. And then in the third frame, there was that little boy caught up in the arms of this plump woman with beautiful halo of white hair. That was Grandma. So I did exactly what the book told me to do. I got on my clothes, ran out the door, and a minute later I was in Grandma's arms. I think about that book, the book of that story in that time, and as I read it now, I realize I hear about people on the news who leave their children in similar situations and end up going very, very badly, and how those people are jailed or prosecuted for what it is that they do. And yet, what my mother and grandmother did was to hold me in the arms of their love. They knew that the extra sleep I got that morning wasn't going to be endangered by the fact that I had to be left by myself. Mama went off to school. Dad was already a teacher at school. It was a world that was safe enough to leave me there, and equally importantly, there was a community, at least the community of mom and dad and grandpa and grandma, but maybe even beyond that to neighbors. And that community held each other in such a way that an event like that could happen in the normal course of things. It couldn't have happened today.